Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Greg Elliott, and today joined by my good friend Oscar. How you doing, Oscar?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Good. Well, we're at that point in the season again where there is, for want of a better term, no real football happening, down to an international break. But this year, this time round, we've got one name in the England squad with Aaron Ramsdale getting his call back, and we thought we'd have a bit of a chat about the squad and maybe a bit of a look forward to our games against Albania and Latvia for the World Cup qualifiers coming up, and sort of go through it. So, Oscar, were you surprised to see Ramsdale making his way back into the squad?
I was surprised to see they're taking, was it 5 goalkeepers? Which is an interesting one on me. I'm not surprised to see him in there. I mean, he's a one of the top English goalkeepers anyway. And to be fair, he must be up there in terms of saves made. So I'm not surprised to see him in there. But, Pickford obviously seems to be the very, and deserved, number one at the moment. But I think, he's a good lad and he's obviously decent as well. So I'm not surprised he's in there, if I'm honest.
It is an interesting one to take 5 goalkeepers. But of the list of the other sort of keepers selected, with Henderson and Trafford, 4 keepers, Henderson, Trafford, Ramsdale and Pickford. Do you think Ramsdale's number 2 out of that choice? Or do you think Henderson edges
so,
it?
yeah. Given where he's played, the level he's played at comparatively, Trafford still is, for want of a better word, a championship goalkeeper. I mean, he might, if Burnley come up again, he might prove that he has the quality in the Premier League, but he struggled a bit last year. But probably good to have him up there in terms of experience. And Henderson, it's probably much for muchness between them, really. I'd say Ramsdale's got a bit more experience. But again, where Pickford's the solidified number one, in some people's opinion, rightly or wrongly, but he's always been good for England. So, yeah, I'd say so. I'm a bit surprised that Pope isn't in the mix, but I suppose he's just come back from fairly long injury, isn't he? So I might still be feeling a little bit worse for wear.
Yeah, it's interesting. Clearly looking forward to the future with a couple of those suggestions as well, like Henderson and Trafford. You would like to think will go on to be in the England mix for a long time to come. So I guess it kind of makes sense to get them bedded in now. Any other names in the list that really sort of stand out as a surprise to you?
I mean, I think the obvious one that everyone's been talking about is Jordan Henderson. And that's been a long held debate, and amongst Southampton fans as well, because I'm sure you, like me, feel that like James Ward-Prowse in particular, okay, maybe not so much now, but a few years ago was heavily overlooked and shouldn't have been. And I think players like Henderson being in there, I understand what he offers. I understand that he's a great professional. He's good in the dressing room. He talks players through games. And I don't know if you ever saw, there was a clip of him. He wasn't mic'd up, but it was during one of the COVID games. So you could very clearly hear what he was saying to everyone and basically talking for people through games. And there's obviously a value to that. Can he do it on the pitch anymore at that level? I'm not so sure. Okay, maybe against, with the greatest respect, Albania and Latvia, he'll probably be all right. And I know he's been doing a bit better in the Dutch league recently. So I saw a thing on Sky Sports. He's completed the most passes this season in the league. 4th in final third passes, 7th in possession 1, 8th in assists with 4, and he's created 29 chances. So he is playing quite well, and Holland and Ajax are doing quite well in the league. But it is, again, with the greatest respect, it is the Dutch league, and you saw what the level difference is when PSV played Arsenal. So can he add it on the pitch? I'm a bit. I understand Tuchel is probably coming into this with a fairly short-termist look. He has to come in and win a trophy. Yeah. So he's probably not bothered by, Adam Wharton or Kobbie Mainoo or, making sure those younger ones are there to ensure the future. He needs to win the trophy. Otherwise, he's not going to last very long as England manager.
Yeah, I guess it's such an interesting pick, and I guess time will tell whether we actually see him get on the pitch as first choice or if he's just that experienced head to have in the dressing room. I guess in a way it's similar to what we've got with Lallana this season, although I would say that Henderson might have slightly more legs than Lallana at this
Yeah,
point.
you'd like to think. Well, but I think if that's the only reason to take him, then take him as a coach, or take him as an unnamed back from start. I don't know. I'm sure there's a way they could do it, but don't take a spot away from one of the young lads. If he actually thinks he's going to add to the team, then fair enough. Again, I'm not convinced he's going to add any more than like an Adam Wharton, for example. But you know, he clearly sees something he likes.
Yeah, it is an interesting pick, and I guess that he's been a sort of a constant part of the England squad for such a long time, apart from I think the last round of games. But there was a lot of criticism when he was in the Saudi league, and perhaps understandably so. But you're right. The Dutch league maybe not the same level, but it's definitely still a step up from that Saudi league.
Yeah, that
So
is true. I think just the frustration, and it happens with every England manager. They start off well. Usually, they start off picking players on form and thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be different this time. We're going to go with all the players that are doing really well," and then gradually find their favourites. And okay, I understand he won Player of the Year a lot, won Player of the Year that year, and Gareth Southgate really liked him. But for me, Calvin Phillips being taken over Ward-Prowse. Again, I know there's a slight bias in that, but that for me, and I'd like to say in the long term, would probably been proven right a little bit given how his career's gone. It frustrates me when England managers have their favourites and don't pick players on form. Like Gibbs White, I think could be really frustrated. I know he's now in, but Conor Gallagher again has been doing really well for Atleti. There are a few players that I think can be pretty frustrated not to be in there. Again, I know Rashford sort of found his feet again, but he hasn't had the greatest of seasons. I just don't. I don't want it. I don't like it when England turns into okay. Well, we're just going to pick the players at the top clubs, irrelevant of how well they've been playing. Like you've got to give chances to everyone. And I'm sure that's probably biased from a smaller club's perspective, but
yeah, okay. Well, there are a couple of other names on the list I want to talk to you about, but first, a message from our partners at Bioniq.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Okay, and we're back. Obviously, a couple of interesting names. Dan Burn with his first call-up. Hard to disagree with that, though. He seems to be really finding his feet at Newcastle. Obviously, they just won the Carabao Cup as well, and
yeah, 100%. I think that's a good one for me. Adds a bit of an aerial threat as well, which we lack without when Maguire's not there. I'm not saying he should be in for the record, but it's an extra string to the bow, and also he's left-sided too. So that always helps with a bit of balance.
yeah, that's something that we know all about.
Exactly.
Trying to hunt for, I guess. Tino Livramento getting a call up back into the squad as well. That's good. He's sort of been going from strength to strength at Newcastle as well, from what I can see. So
yeah, good. Fair play to him. Love to see him doing well. Was pretty gutted when he left, but fairly completely understandable. And look where he is now. He's playing in Champions League games, or did last year. Winning trophies and playing for England. So, how much he plays, I don't know. Obviously, Tuchel will likely have a strong favouritism towards Reece James, given the amount they work together. But if he can play, maybe on that left side, because that's always been an area that England have struggled recently for a left back, and I know he can play on that side. So maybe that's something we could look at.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. Speaking of Reece James, obviously you say that it seems to be the favourite. I mean, are you surprised he's got the call up with his sort of injury record and track record? He's not been.
Not really. I think
That's fine.
there's certain players. I know he hasn't been playing, and again, goes back to that sort of favouritism thing. But he comes in with a favourite already. You know, he relied on them heavily when he was at Chelsea. Was part of the team with him that won the Champions League. So I'm not surprised to see him in the squad in some capacity, especially an early one, because he will help him get across what he needs to get across in terms of maybe the system they're going to play. So yeah, I'm not surprised with that one.
Yeah, and it's how do you think he's going to shape up in these qualifiers? Because historically we see England teams. You want to see more progressive and attacking play with like the attacking quality we've got with like your Fodens, your Bowens, your Gordons, your Solankis, and what we've seen repeatedly for as much of my lifetime as I can remember is like a really defensively lined up, like solid at the back shape that sort of neglects that talent. Do you
Yeah,
think that we're likely to get something more dynamic from Tuchel?
you'd like to hope. Again, especially after the last World Cup, and I think you give credit to Gareth Southgate for everything he achieved, but football ultimately is about entertaining people. Yes, it's about winning things as well, and I know he wanted to do that. But I think the last tournament in particular was a failure. Obviously, we did well, but I think in reality we got where we got to because of the players' talent, rather than necessarily how they were coached or how they were set up. So I think England fans want more dynamism, and again, especially with the players that we've got. I think there's obviously a balance to be found, and we struggled against Greece when they did that. When Carsley listened to everyone and said, "Right, we're going to try and get all the best players on." So there's a balance to be found. I did a little bit of digging into Tuchel and what he favoured. Chelsea, he favoured a 3-4-2-1. So again, with those dynamic wing backs getting up and down, including Reece James at right wing back, I imagine. Maybe it was Chilwell involved at left wing back. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think he's been included in this squad, is he? From what I've seen,
No,
no.
he's not
So
on the list I've got anyway.
maybe a different option for that one. But I could see that two number 10s behind Harry Kane. I think realistically, it still will be Harry Kane, unless he drops in as one of the 10s. But I can't see that. There seems to be and rightfully, like Harry Kane is obviously a world class player. But there are certain players that I think are pick themselves, really. I think the whole spine, you go straight through. Pickford will be in. Rice, I'm pretty sure, will be in. Bellingham will be in. And Kane will be in. No, I think those ones are guarantees. I think past that, you're not too sure. But I could see those 2 10s working behind a striker working quite well with fullbacks overlapping, wingbacks rather. Maybe a Palmer and a Foden behind Kane, or we've got options there. Let's be honest. Maybe it's a Palmer and a Bellingham, and then a Rice and maybe Henderson sat behind.
Is it one of those cases like where, especially with international football, I feel like it's so important. Instead of sticking to a system that he wants to implement, was it not more beneficial to just get our best players on the pitch and play them in their best position?
Well, yeah, I mean that is the argument. But it's difficult. It's difficult to get all of our best players on the pitch at the same time. Again, that's what Lee Carsley tried to do against Greece, and it really didn't work. I think that he's got to find a balance. I agree. For me, I dabble in coaching. My argument is always you make a system depending on the players that you have. That's what I think you should do. As you've expressed frustration with this season already,
Yeah.
It seems to be a modern way not to do that, and you come in with your system. This is why I'm going to do it, and that's probably what Tuchel would have been saying when he went in for the job. This is the system that I'm going to play. This is why it will work with the players that we've got. So I think there's just a balance to be found with it, really. If you can find a sort of happy medium between that, but that the question is then, who are our best players that we have to get in? Because is there a formation that fits it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answers. Otherwise, I guess I'd be getting paid millions of pounds on a short-term contract with the FA. Maybe that's on the cards. You never know. They look at Football Manager says, right? I mean, frankly, if they were taking that into consideration, it would probably be Zach in charge. Okay, I've got a question for you about the style of contract for Tuchel, but first I've got a message from our partners at Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description and learn more about Zencastr. Okay, and we're back. So yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic that the FA have introduced with this contract for Tuchel, right? And not something we've really seen from an England manager in the past. What is it? Just winning the point that is considered a success for him to potentially get an extension and stay on longer? Or do you think even if he wins, he just goes out on that high and we move on to the next plan anyway?
I think so. It's difficult. Look, I think with Southgate, it was a long-term plan that he executed very well. Like I'm not Southgate's biggest fan. I'll be honest, and I know you can't overlook everything he did achieve for the long term. Like he's brought back the love for England to an extent. I mean, I know we've shared about the apathy towards or lack of interest towards friendlies and Nations League and things like that. But in terms of a tournament season, I think there's a much more positive environment around England that started to sour a little bit towards the end, before Bellingham's bicycle kick, basically. So I think he did well with that, very much setting up for the long term. I think we saw, though, it was the Euros against Italy, wasn't it, in the final, when he came up against a proper coach, a tactical coach, and he came up completely second best in that. Like, he's a good manager. I'm not convinced about his ability as a coach. Hence, I mean, he's only, to be fair to him, managed Middlesbrough, I think, at the professional level.
Yeah.
The argument is, if you're a Premier League club, like, would you take him at Southampton? Would you have at the beginning of the season? Would you now? I mean,
Now I think I would. At the beginning of the season, probably not.
Yeah, but to rebuild, fair enough. But I don't think there'll be many Premier League clubs knocking on the door. And an international management is obviously very different. But I think that's obviously what they've looked at and thought the only thing Southgate was lacking was that experience, having won something, and experience as a coach, a top level coach, which is what they've got in Tuchel. But I think the tricky thing is for Tuchel is if he doesn't win the World Cup now, it will be a failure. Like, that is what I think the bar has been set. Southgate was he sacked? He didn't renew, did he? But
yeah,
he moved on because the remit now is right. We need to go and start winning things with this generation that we've got. So I think success has to be the remit. What happens in the long term after that is a good question.
Yeah. I think the reason they've given him a short-term contract is because they've got someone else in mind who just isn't available yet.
Yeah, that's
I'd like to
entirely
think
possible.
that might be Eddie Howe, because that's, in my mind, that's the next very logical successor.
I agree. I think they were probably also very conscious that the public opinion might be a bit divided. Not having an English manager or a British manager to start with is controversial in itself. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Having a German manager in particular is, that's
very controversial.
Yeah, that's like Rafa Benitez going to Everton. Like, I can see why it's always a difficult one to start with. But I think if he does well, England fans will embrace him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, one of those, really.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It'll be really interesting to see. It's an additional sort of layer of pressure for him, I guess. But he must know that signing up and taking on the deal that it's do or die, and that's the case.
Here's one for you. Could we see, well, to be fair, arguably a Scottish manager coming in and taking that favours a certain brand of possession football? He's out of work at the moment as well.
I would be very surprised if, based off of the story he's set for himself this season, if that were the case at any point in the future, honestly.
It's true. What I would say, though, in fairness, is that he might be able to do it with the quality of players he'd have at his disposal.
Yeah.
They obviously all seem to buy into the management style. I'm not banging the drum Russell Martin for England, for the record, but, it would be interesting.
It would be interesting. Maybe not successful, but definitely interesting.
No. Yeah, well, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's such a fascinating build-up to a tournament. And then I guess also the questions, especially because Euro 2028 we're hosting part of it, right? So, and I think the final. So, is it Wembley?
Are you suggesting that it's coming home, Greg?
I don't want to. I don't want to start saying those words this early in. I mean, if you start brandishing that about at this point, we'll go and lose to both Latvia and Malta, right? So it's
That's true.
that stark sort of reality that gets drilled into you as, I guess, both an England fan and a Saints fan, is that you get your hopes up just for something ridiculous to occur and have it shot straight back down. But I like to think of it as character building, I guess, is part of it.
Very true. We've got to have so much character then as both Southampton and England fans by now.
Yeah.
That,
yeah. And, and setting up my kids for the same unfortunate fate as well. It's
would you class yourself as a big England fan? Like, have you been to many games or ever?
No, not particularly. I've been to actually more Lionesses games than I've been to England men's games. I follow them for the qualifiers and for the tournaments, but don't really have any interest in the friendlies. My sister-in-law, she goes to most of the England games at Wembley. I would say she's a more avid follower of it than me. But
Yeah, I don't think I've ever. I've never watched England play, and I think it's definitely something I'd be quite keen to do. The reason for that being that I'd always said that I'm not going to go to Wembley until Southampton are in a cup final, and that took quite a long time. So
yeah.
I have now been to see us lose every time we've been there. But England's next on the cards. What I would have given to be there for that England-Scotland game, though.
Yes.
The greatest header in world football ever.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that's it. Maybe we'll have to arrange a daily Southampton trip out to Wembley to watch an England game at some point.
Yeah,
I was going to say the next time we get a Saints player who's guaranteed minutes in the England squad, but
to be fair, Harwood Bellis was training with them today as well for some reason. So maybe
he did make his debut before and get a goal, right? So. Yeah, interesting one. Or maybe good things to come on the England front from a Saints perspective. Or maybe not a Saints perspective, depending on how the end of the season goes, I guess is the real question there. But well, that just about brings us to all we've got time for today. Thanks for listening to us waffle on about England. Should be an interesting set of qualifiers. It's probably the first international break where the games are at least of an interest to me. So that's something at least.
Very cool.
All right, Oscar, thank you very much for joining me. Thanks everyone for giving us a listen. What do you think about the England line squads and Tuchel? Do you think that it's coming home, or is it far too early to say that? Let us know in the socials. We're on X, TikTok, Blue Sky, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of the good stuff. Let us know. Until then, we will be back tomorrow.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
But yeah, at least he's in that position to score the goal. And that's what you needed, because without any of the other strikers on the pitch, that's not the case. And Archer running off behind and Torpal being a target and Diblin and sort of Suleiman on the wings running through. What was a threat? Suleiman again kept getting past the players, but there's just no one to pass to, no cross to make. If he crosses the ball, it's not going anywhere. So you needed that target to sort of bring that through.
Yeah, and again, I understand the logic of the fact that probably both Dibbling and Suleiman are more inside forwards or wingers that want to get in and try and maybe cut back and score, rather than they're going to get it out to the byline and whip it. Like I think we were discussing this the other day, it seems like that's sort of a dying art for wide players now to actually cross a ball. But even so, I think Torpal being on there, it makes them think about something a bit different. And rather than putting Fernandez in there, who's not played there, or Grombach, and it's not really fair on these players either. And if I'm Matty Fernandez, I'm thinking, well, you're playing me out of position and hooking me at half time. He's the player that I think we should be doing everything in our power we can to keep. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think we will keep him for next year, but I'd be moving heaven and earth because he's got the right attitude as well that we will need next year.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And there are some other positives to take from it as well. I think Uga Chugwu had a particularly good game. It seemed to really be him and Aribo who are really putting themselves about the pitch and like putting a shift in and trying.
Which is interesting because I think that Aribo previously that wasn't necessarily his game, hard work
Yeah.
and energy. So yeah, interesting.
But yeah, I think they both had sort of quite a good game.
Maybe he's thriving in his new position.
Yeah, maybe. Yuki was an interesting one. I was a bit surprised to see his name on the sheet after what can only really be described as a bit of a gaffe last week. Was it a shock to you that he sort of maintained it?
I don't know. Again, he seems like I think there's a good player in there. I think he's been taken by. Well, it looks like he's been taken by surprise as to quite what the jump that he's taken is. But again, another one that seems like he's an honest. He seems to be honest, works hard, has the right sort of personality that I think you'd want. I know there were comments that he made in an interview, but I think they were blown out of proportion. I think he's probably more just saying, "I'm not focusing on anything, but let's actually try and survive first, or whatever." Like I say, I didn't see how he played, but there's enough attributes in there that make me think he's a player that we'd like to that I think we should be looking at keeping next year. He's a new signing anyway, so why not let him find his feet?
I actually think he had an all right game. The back, it being a back three, sort of freed him up to effectively play out on the wing rather than do anything defensive, and that kind of suits him. There were a few good balls out to him that he sort of managed to take down and fizz a few in. I'm pretty sure it's him that fizzed the one into Sulemana where he should have done better, and I think he actually managed to have what I believe was our first shot on target in, upsettingly, the 63rd minute.
That's better than the last time we played Wolves.
Yeah, that is true. But sort of I sit in the northern end, right behind the warm up goal, and we always get there early because I sit with my little one and have some lunch there because it's easier to park and whatever. And we're watching the warm up, and it was genuinely the worst shooting practice in a warm up I've ever seen. Manning's shot first and cleared the safety net with his first shot. And it didn't really get better from there. I think of the about 20 shots they took, 3 of them went in, one of which was Manning's second shot, which he did bury in the top corner, to be fair. And 4 of the balls cleared the safety net. So
that probably indicates it wasn't going to be our day.
It really set the tone. I'm sat there thinking, oh no, like it was just there's no way that doing that in a warm up can boost your confidence for shooting in the game, and that really sort of came to. But yeah, it's just frustrating. Again, like it's the same story. Put in what can be called a half decent performance and still come away with nothing.
I've seen quite a lot of people this weekend in particular, quite a lot of the pundits. I think Alex Crook mentioned it. I think Alfie House saying this is I think it was mainly Alfie House, this is one of the worst teams that's come to St Mary's this season. How on earth have we lost?
Yeah.
But again, it's because we can't score. And, this conversation has been going on from the beginning. Take out the bit that in the middle, we're terrible in both boxes, so it's always going to be a problem. Like, we're all right in the middle of them, but just in the boxes.
Even then, we got overrun half the time. So
yeah, well, okay, it's not much of a relatively okay compared to how we are in the boxes, should we say then? Because we can't finish and we can't defend, and that's always a recipe for disaster. So it doesn't matter if Pep Guardiola was running this team. I still think it would have been a tricky one to stay up. I think, which is more or less what Martin was trying to say, not to go back to him too much, but what he was saying on Monday Night Football is that he almost thought he would get the season because everyone knew what the situation was. But unfortunately, again, if you lose the fans, that's where you're gonna run into trouble. And that seems to be the route that Juric is heading down as well.
Yeah, and I guess we'll touch on that and some of the chance hats, some of the decisions. But first, a message from our partners at Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Okay, yeah, so I want to carry on with that sort of train of thought and the jeers towards towards the manager as the sort of substitutions were made. Now, at half time, we touched on that at half time, it was strongly booed that Matty Fernandez was off. With you don't know what you're doing. Then there was a substitution after that where we took off Sugawara for Archer, and that got cheered and whooped. Then after that, Sulemana and Ugochukwu came off for Downs and Grombeck, which was met with mostly apathy at that point.
No one still left there at that point.
That's it. Well, and then Rebo came off and Stevens came on, which again was booed. So it did feel like a turn. There was definitely a very negative vibe, and it never felt like, even when the goal came and there was a bit of life in the crowd, it never felt like anyone actually thought we were getting anything from the game.
I think the thing is, expectations are low. Let's be honest, and I think to credit like the fans, I don't go every week. You do yourself, and lots of these people go home and away every week, and they're still turning up. I don't. Obviously, we're as bad as the record shows, but we're not as bad as people are making us look for no apparent reason. Like I really don't understand. You can instill solidity and a bit of fight, and if we get beaten still, I think it will be accepted. But it's the baffling decisions, I think, that people just don't. It's almost like you're trying to be too smart for your own good, playing one centre back in a team that leaks goals.
Yeah,
Like when we have, they are available now. I mean, was Harwood Bellis?
yeah. Howard Bellis started. Yeah,
He started, okay.
Yeah, so he started. I think he was sort of on the left of the centre back.
Right, okay.
And yeah, Walker Peters with Aribo sort of floating slightly in front of the centre back, sort of as a second holding midfielder next to Ugochukwu.
But
So
does it need to be complicated? And we said, we spoke about it a bit last week. These players are low on confidence, so give them something they know how to do. They clearly don't know how to do this because they can't do it, and they've shown they can't. You find something to look at that works, and then maybe try and stick with it. And just there comes an extent now where they probably do need to start trying to appease the fans, because that's about all they can do for the rest of the season. And it's not exactly you can turn around and justify it saying, oh well, we got the 3 points, even if the fans might not like it, but we're not getting the points either. So we're upsetting everyone, we're playing terrible football, and we're not getting any results out of it. So, for me, and I know Adam Blackmore was talking about it yesterday with on their going home thing. Is it a viable option? And I was listening to TalkSport as well, and we can touch on that as well. Is it a viable option to sack Juric now, given that it's an international break? And, I know a lot of people have said give it Lallana till the end of the season, or again, Rusk. There's worse options out there. He's kept. It's a bit Sellers-y, but if they're going to try and carbon copy the end of last season, then they might as well do it.
I mean, the biggest question is, how much does that cost us? Like, does it actually matter? Like, yeah, the season's done anyway. There's nothing else to play for. So if it's going to cost us a ridiculous amount of money because he's not made it to the break clause in the summer, then we might as well save the money and keep him, as painful and horrible as it is.
But you can, he can still be employed by the club, and you just, you can wash the kit or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
And they were talking on TalkSport as well, quite seriously. This was Jamie O'Hara and whoever. I don't know if it was maybe slightly Pompey-minded wind-up, but genuinely asking the question, why don't we get Russell Martin back for next season? Which I think is an
shocking. That's a horrible take. That is, yeah. I don't think any fan would sit for that.
And not for him either, I don't think.
I guess I do have. I guess it would be remiss of me not to mention. I sort of said earlier that no one really believed that we were going to get anything from it, but there was still that sort of slight hope and drive on, and it wouldn't do to mention the point that sort of made and drove home that anger, which was Wolves just being the worst, dive in on the floor. There was one absolute joke of a moment where sat where I am, I could see down the pitch, and it was like they were going for a synchronized dive in middle. Like, oh, the ball's out of play, we better lie down and have cramp. And it was just ridiculous. It was about 10 times, and it was slowing the play down, and it was really winding me up. And the referee, to his credit, wasn't really standing for any of it, and actually had a reasonably good game, but then only added 6 minutes on. And then 2 of those minutes weren't played because the ball was out of play and one of them was down. And then he blew it pretty much bang on 96 minutes, and it winds me up.
Yeah.
When why are you blowing the whistle when you said there's 6 minutes to play and we haven't played that 6 minutes? Like, we were pushing and trying for the goal. We were really sort of throwing the kitchen sink at it at that point. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, we could have played for 3 days and not scored again. But it's the principle of it.
I agree. It's frustrating, but it's one of those things that you look at, and if your team are doing it and it means you win the game, then it's the best thing ever. At times, certain things, maybe not throwing themselves around on the floor, but it's also something that's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm sure they said, and particularly, I know it's been quite a Martin-heavy episode, but I'm sure he said last season, we're going to make it so that we are horrible to play against. And things like that would have been part of that. We're going to wind everyone up, and we're going to, for about 20 minutes when Brereton Diaz got Shah sent off, I believed it. Since then, we've I think the idea was to have a bit of a hardened underbelly. We've got the softest underbelly of any team in the Premier League, and we look like, it was like when I think, it might have been the season we went down the first time, when we kept giving the ball back to them for like a throw in, then they'd throw it over our head and score. Like, just a bit of naivety in it as well.
Yeah. And I mean, there was one moment where it like triggered a horrible memory. Like, Sarr kicked the ball massively out into touch so that they could take off an injured player and make a sub. And I just had flashbacks to when someone did it the other year and Shea Adams decided to pass them the ball back. And I was at least pleased to see that we didn't do that. This time we just played through and tried to get the goal back. And like, it was frustrating because, it's easy to sit here afterwards and say, "Oh, no one believed," but there was definitely willing on and cheering, and if we were pushing for it, and I genuinely don't think it would have come.
No.
But it's.
Well, I genuinely, with my prediction, I actually thought we would win that game. What better opportunity are we going to have to win for the rest of the season? Genuinely,
Leicester away is surely the only fixture left on the cards that's even remotely doable.
Can we get some points on the board? I don't know at this point. If we can't beat that Wolves team without Cunha, and this is where, again, going back to Juric a little bit, I really do not understand. Maybe it was out of context, I don't know, but what on earth he was talking about yesterday, saying, I think tomorrow Wolves will be a little bit less safe in the Premier League. Did you hear about this?
I did, yeah. I saw it in the press conference, and I think he was just trying to make a joke, basically, because the question was, "Are Wolves safe? Have they got nothing to play for?" And he's like, "Well, if you're looking at it mathematically, they're the only team we can actually catch. So, no, we'll beat them, and they'll be a little bit less safe." It was just like an offhanded joke comment. That's been
fair enough. He's made some odd comment. I mean, I think he was saying today, they asked him about, which again is a loaded question that's quite difficult to answer, but they asked him about fans booing, and he was basically said, "Yeah, they should boo more. They should, they've been really patient. They should boo more." That's an interesting way to go down.
Well, I think it's just like acceptance that he knows that it's Tosh that we've been watching for the longest time. There's obviously things he sees in the team that frustrates him as well, and you can tell that by the way he tries to change it. But his decisions also just balmy. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And I'm sure that there's an argument to be had that obviously he's the one that gets paid to make these decisions, and then bringing Tuchel on at half time, got booed, but he did score the goal. So
yeah, I mean, it's true, but at the same time, bring a striker on who scores a goal, I don't necessarily know that it takes a tactical genius to work that out. And let's be
I
honest,
mean,
it could have
does it take
fallen
a
to
tactical
anyone.
genius to get a
But
striker on the pitch at any point? There you go.
well, exactly. Let's be honest, we've not exactly been gifted with brilliant strikers for the last few years. So, and for the ones we have had, finishing's never been their forte.
No.
Since Danny Ings, really.
Yeah. Well, it's honestly, it was a pretty grim day out at St Mary's, and I mostly left angry, which wasn't helped by the fact that because we sort of gave ourselves a chance and stuck in with the goal and tried to get something back. The traffic on the way home was the worst it's been all season because there were still people in the stadium watching it. So yeah, it was not great, but we've got plenty of time for the circle of optimism to kick in now. We've got an international break and we'll see how we get on. We're up Crystal Palace up next and a night at St Mary's under the lights. I'm sure that by the time we're doing the preview for that episode, I'll be bouncing and calling for a 4-0 win again or something. But
yeah, maybe. Hopefully Mateta's still injured.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm bold enough to feel like that at the moment. So, well, that is just about all we've got time for tonight. So let us know in the comments. Do you think we've got a chance of getting any more points this season? Oscar, thank you for joining me. Thank you everyone for listening. Give us a shout out on the socials. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, YouTube on the GSPN, everywhere. And until then, we will be back tomorrow.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.